Hello and welcome to this week's Granny's Garden. Now this was going to be a January tour around the garden, but because we got hit by a blizzard and then afterwards we had storms and afterwards we had a very cold snap, it's going to be a walk around the garden to check for damage. So we better get started. Regarding the containers, some fared a lot better than others. In this first container, the Jerusalem cherry is doing absolutely grand, the ivy likewise, it's just the sedum that's looking a little bit on the rough side. This second container, unfortunately, is a different story. The spider plant, which has survived 3 whole winters out here in the mountains, has succumbed to the cold. So it's a bit of a goner, as are the 2 geraniums either side of it. The ornamental cabbages are not very ornamental anymore. They're all squidgy and mushy, so they're definitely going to be removed. However, the violas, despite the fact that we're completely flattened, have really perked up, and some have even got little flowers on it. Isn't that pretty? The aucuba, I'm very glad to say, has survived and it's even got new growth. So, one up for that. In my recent video on floppy Italian cypresses, I talked about the worst enemy for floppy branches, and that is ice and snow. And here you can see the damage typical of ice and snow on the branches of a floppy cypress. They're completely open and completely weighed down. As a matter of fact, the only branches that are still in a vertical position are the ones at the base where I wound the fishing wire round, and the ones that we had mended previously with soft ties. All of the rest of them have opened, unfortunately. The Helleborus for me was the biggest surprise, and a very pleasant surprise at that. They look so delicate, and yet when it finally melted, there were the 2 beautiful clumps. One of them was a complete nice rounded moundy clump, and the other one, although still a bit flat, it's on its way to perking up again. Absolutely amazing. I take my hat off to them. Regarding the African daisies, a bit of a shame, because each of the 3 of the plants I have had reached the 3.5 foot mark. They had a beautiful round lobe shape, and unfortunately it's not a question here of just pruning it back down, because the actual branches down at the bottom are splayed out. So even if they started to regrow, they're going to regrow in an outer position instead of the clump position that I need. So that's going to have to be replaced. The loss of the Cotoneaster is absolutely devastating for me. At a first glance it might look alright, but if you get close you can see that the top graft, which is where the weeping part is grafted onto the rootstock, split completely open under the weight of the snow and ice. And I thought in the beginning that I may be able to repair it, maybe sort of like pushing it together and putting a screw through it. But as you can see in this video, it's completely falling apart. 2 of the branches, one of the branches came away in my hand and the other one is about to fall onto the ground, and the split goes right down. The fracture goes down a good 6 inches and it's right plop in the middle of the graft. So there's no coming back from that, and I'm going to have to remove that plant, and I'm absolutely gutted. Ah yes, the famous succulent garden. Now this succulent garden was a test to see if a succulent garden could survive outside in this mountainous region. Well, it has had the worst test, a test of fire, because this is the worst winter on record. We have to see what is going to survive. Obviously things like the paddle plant are completely mush, and a lot of the plants have gone to complete mush. I have 2 haworthias, and one of them had stripes and one of them had spots, and now the spotted one has got no spots and the stripy one has got no stripes, so who knows what's going to happen. Regarding the echeveria, it looks very stressed out, and the leaves have got and I don't like the feel of the leaves at all. So we'll just wait and see what happens. Now, although the Helleborus, as we said, is doing absolutely fantastically, the same can't be said for the shrub beside it, which of course is the Westringia. I planted this Westringia in spring and it was doing fantastically. It's a lovely conical fluffy shrub in this blue-grey tone. And unfortunately, not only the branches are broken, but also the leader is broken. So I'm not going to touch it at the moment. I'm just going to leave it and see what happens in spring, and see if there's any type of vertical growth that maybe could take over as a new leader. If not, I'll just have to scrap it and restart. The European fan palm came through this amazingly. You saw it in the beginning of the video, the little fingers pushing through the snow like a phoenix from the ashes. Incredible. The spinach and Swiss chard were under a fleece, and as soon as the snow melted and I could get the fleece clean again, they're absolutely perfect. Quite delicious, in fact. I had some the other day. Fantastic. Now, the damage from the blizzard has been a bit of a mixed bag. Certainly I've got structural damage. The roof over the chill out and the roof over the washing line are goners and have to be replaced. On the plant size, I've had pleasant surprises. The Helleborus really surprised me. After having spent the best part of 2 weeks under 4 foot of snow and ice, I was so surprised to see it pop up completely mounded and looking beautiful with flowers intact. There's a lot of shrubs with damage, broken branches, etc. Normally as gardeners, the DDDs, if it's dead, if it's damaged or diseased, you see to it directly and you come out with your snippers and you cut it off. But the one time you don't do it is if there has been extreme damage by either ice or snow or extreme cold. My euonymus hedge that's around the lawn has got frostbite and it's looking a bit stressed. Now, I'm not going to touch that because at the moment it's the outer edge that got frostbite and the inner edge is perfectly nice and green. So if I was to cut it and cut out the frostbite, all I'm doing is leaving a new edge to get further frostbite. It's now the beginning of February, and during the months of February and indeed March, I can still have severe cold snaps, which can again damage the hedge. So I'm not going to do anything either to bushes or to hedges or indeed anything at all. Well, that's not quite true. In the containers, things that are already turned to mush, I'm going to get those out because anything that's really mushy, it eventually just grows mould on it. And it's best out. All the rest, I'm just going to leave it. On the negative side, I've got 2 things. First of all will be the Italian cypresses. A video I had just shot about 2 weeks beforehand talked about the worst enemy of an Italian cypress being ice and snow, and as if to prove my point, along came the ice and the snow and weighed the branches and opened them right out, and of course they won't unflop by themselves, and so many of them are very, very high up that I'm not able to reach even with the tallest ladder I've got. The biggest blow to me has obviously been the weeping Cotoneaster. I was absolutely gutted and it's just beyond repair. As gardeners, we have to deal with it. I mightn't like it, but we have to deal with it. And I'll certainly turn it into an opportunity. And I'm definitely going to plant an absolutely beautiful purple Japanese maple there. And it'll look absolutely gorgeous within the next 2 to 3 years. It is the month of February, which of course is seed fever month. And of course, in my garden, I'm going to be doing exactly the same thing. I'm going to be planting some seeds. I have got some very unusual ones, and I've got a beautiful Spanish native one from Tenerife that I want to share with you. It's exotic. It's absolutely gorgeous. So stay tuned for that. Hit the subscribe button so you won't miss it. And for all of us, next week, next Friday, here in Granny's Garden. Until then, bye-bye.